All right. So first, getting into how information security works. This is a question I ask all the time is what is information security? We take this for granted. If you ask 10 CISOs, even a Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies to give you their definition of information security, you're going to get 10 different answers. There'll be some similarities in the answers, but some of them will be way off, which is sort of sad because we have to have this kind of agreement on what information security is. The key words in this definition are managing risk. It's not eliminating risk. It's always managing risk. Unauthorized disclosure, alteration, and destruction. So disclosing data, that'd be a failure in confidentiality, where maybe somebody lost medical records. So that would be an unauthorized disclosure. Alteration would be something like I manipulated my bank account, gave myself another few zeros at the end of my balance. That would be an unauthorized alteration. And then destruction is, denial of service attacks are popular destruction. Ransomware is another, destruction of data. Those things are important. And the reason why that's important is oftentimes we overemphasize confidentiality. We try so hard to protect against disclosure. And the reason why this is all important is if I don't understand what information security is, then I'm not going to understand what an incident is. And then administrative, physical, and technical controls are also very important because it's not an IT issue. This is a business issue. Administrative controls are the people part of security, and it's always easier to go through your secretary than it is to go through your firewall, right? Attackers today aren't like they were when I was a hacker, where we did it for bragging rights and kind of looked for the challenge. Attackers today are business. They're money driven. They want return on investment. So if it's easier to go through your secretary than your firewall, that's where they're going to go. Why would I spend 24, 25, 48 hours trying to peg a firewall looking for some vulnerability that I may never find an exploit for versus just send an email or pick up the phone and call? So administrative controls is very, very important. On the physical side of things, it doesn't really matter how good your firewall works if I can steal your server, right? So this is why this definition of information security is really dear to us, and we use it all the time, is because it fits. It fits our definition of incident. A violation of these things we would maybe term an incident. But that's another thing that we often overlook in our industry, is just assuming that everybody knows what an information security incident is versus an event. And we can spend a lot of time talking through all the intricacies of that. What's really important is in your own organization, on your own team, that you all share the same definition. It's sort of okay if I have a different definition than you do, but within your own team, people working on that incident together, you all need to be on the same page. So that's why that definition is really, really important. Where am I at now? I don't know what's going to come up next. There you go. Not eliminating risk. Now that's really important because we'll get to why that if I can't eliminate risk, then that means there is going to be risk. And if there is going to be risk, then it always leaves the door open for an incident, a bad thing to happen. So that's really, really important. Not just keeping things secret, I talked through that, and not just an IT issue. This is a business issue. Business needs to get involved with information security. As a CISO, I've been CISO in lots of different organizations. Usually I had to shave, but now I don't have to anymore. The CISO really has two jobs, right? The first job is to consult the business on information security so that the business can make good risk decisions. The business makes risk decisions, not me. When I'm applying my skills or my craft, I'm much more risk averse. It'd be hard for the business to make money if I was making risk decisions. So that's job number one, is advising the business on risk. The other job is to implement those risk decisions to the best of your ability. That's it. So being a simple person, that's nice. Now you notice the really, really important part in there is business. The business makes risk decisions. The business has to own information security. So we spend a lot of time on that. All right. So if it's managing risk, I'm just going to go through a quick cycle here. Then that means that I can't prevent, and it's true, I can't prevent all bad things from happening, period. That's where incidents live. An incident is a bad thing that's happened, something with bad consequences. You may have your own definition, a different definition of an incident, and that's fine. But within your own organization, you need to have that same incident definition. Another thing is events. Events sometimes, are indicators of incidents or can build into an incident. The thing with an event is it's just an occurrence of something. Something happened. If I haven't confirmed that that event has a negative consequence, then it's not an incident in my book. Again, you may have your own definition. That's fine. So this would lead you to believe that incidents are inevitable. If I can't possibly prevent all bad things from happening, then an incident is inevitable. It's just a function of time, as well as number of threats, vulnerabilities, and things like that. But it's a function of time. Over time, it's inevitable. You're going to have an incident, period. That's it. So if I have an incident and I can't possibly prevent all bad things from happening, then I have to have the things in place to detect the bad things that happened. Otherwise, I'll never know. And on average, you can see that there's significant deficiency in this in our industry, because on average, it takes companies 200 days to identify that an incident or a breach has occurred. That's too long. The longer an incident goes, the more damage is typically done. If you can jump on it quickly, you can get containment. That's one step in an incident response, is to try to get containment of the incident. So containment becomes much more difficult when it's gone on for a while. And so the third part of that cycle, if I can't prevent all bad things from happening, I should have something in place to detect it. And where I do detect it, what's my response going to be? If you don't have a formal response, you still have a response. Even the lack of not doing anything is a response. It's best to have a good planned out response so that you can manage risk. Don't rely on luck, and don't rely on, the goodwill of your attacker. You should plan. So sadly, 77% of organizations in the United States don't have an incident response plan. They don't have something documented. They don't have something tested. They don't have something communicated. And they are left to luck. And the sad thing is we see this all the time. Now, I spend all my time today at Security Studio, but I still have a foot or a toe in FR Secure. And we get 5 to 6 incidents reported maybe a week. And if we're not consulting you, and most of these are coming from non-consulting clients, so it means we didn't have really an existing relationship, or if we did, it was very transactional. So we did a specific project and then, we went our separate ways. It's sad how many of those incidents end up in a really bad spot. I can recall times when I've sat across, one time in particular, where I sat across from the president of a company. It was a 200 employee company. When he realized that his business will not recover from the incident. It's sad because you want to do something for them, but it's too late. We had to do it. We had to do this like yesterday. So anyway, really important to have a response, and we're going to talk through kind of what that response is. So here's the cycle. Incidents are inevitable. Period. It takes too long for you to discover an incident, so spend some more time maybe on your detection capabilities. Some people use a managed SOC. Some people use managed detection and response capability. Some people just turned on logging better. Maybe they have an SIM solution or something in their environment, but something to detect the bad thing from happening. And then having a formal response to attend to those things. And I could talk a lot longer on all this stuff, but we can talk later too. So, and this is important, working with lawyers enough times now, ignorance used to be defensible, meaning if I could just claim I didn't know any better. I didn't know that this is how security worked. I didn't know that I should have an incident response plan. I didn't know that, a breach could have happened. I didn't know that ransomware was really a thing. Those things used to be, just a few years ago, they used to be pretty defensible. Now they're not. People demand better answers. And this is really kind of important too, because we would do assessments for organizations, and executive management say, well, I don't really want to have an assessment because I don't want to know what I don't want to know because I'll have to fix it. Thinking that that's defensible, that's not. So anyway, you can see why if breaches are inevitable, how could I not have an incident response plan? That would be a line of questioning that I think most good lawyers would take you down that path. What was your definition of information security? Did you not know that incidents happen? Why wouldn't you plan for it? Those would all be legitimate questions I think you'd have to have, a good answer to. All right. So my top 10 incident response statistics, I'll go through these quick too. The average time to identify a data breach worldwide is 197 days, so close to that 200 that I cited before. The likelihood of a material data breach over the next 24 months has risen to 32.3% by the fiscal year 2018. That was pre-COVID. The likelihood of a material data breach now, I think over the next 24 months, I don't have data, but if I were to use my gut, I would say it's over 40%. So it's probably going to happen in the next, not probably, I guess if it was over 50%, it'd be probably, but there's a pretty good likelihood in the next 2 years that you watching this, you sitting there, doing work, you're going to be in this boat too. I'm going to be in this boat. I have, we have our own company to deal with. It's important. So healthcare accounts for 27% of data breaches, higher than any other sector. There's a couple of contributing factors to that. One, healthcare doesn't have money. Most healthcare organizations are losing money. So they don't have a lot of money to formalize these things. You can do a lot of this work for cheap. It doesn't cost you a lot. But people want to sell things. So 27% of breaches in healthcare. Another reason why that's a big number is healthcare entities, just like government entities, are more likely to pay ransoms because something isn't working. That's really, 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 really important. So hurry up and pay the ransom. And I think another reason is the data. Healthcare data is still fetches the highest price on the dark web. So healthcare, that's the number one target, but even then it's only 27%. So that means the others, account for 73%. So it's not like if I'm not in healthcare, then I don't have to worry. There's still worry. 58% of data breaches are in small to medium-sized businesses. They're easier targets. They're low-hanging fruit. It's most small to mid-sized businesses are fairly easy to target. So those are important statistics. 53% of organizations share information on data breaches. So 47% we never know about, according to this particular study. And I can, if you want to go, down rabbit holes too, I can, I have the sources that I can share later. But 47% of organizations are not reporting breaches to anybody. And we've seen this numerous times in incident response as well. For a healthcare entity, we'll be doing an incident response. There's an obvious unauthorized disclosure of PHI, that's protected health information, which means it's reportable by law, but it's administrative law. It's not criminal law. So we would advise that the healthcare entity report the breach to the Department of Health and Human Services, as they're supposed to do. They may choose not to, and there's no recourse, meaning, we're working under, our own agreements with the healthcare entity. If they decide not to report it, we can't make them report it. And actually, we'd be breaking the law if we reported it on their behalf. It's just weird. So, but I guess the point is we've seen this happen many, many times where organizations should be reporting breaches and they're not. The mean time to recover from a data breach can be as high as 70 days. It can be more than that. But I think that's probably a pretty good high average. So 70 days of trying to get containment, trying to get whatever eradication. Probably have insurance, legal, all kinds of other things that are happening in all that 70 days. 76% of organizations worldwide have experienced a phishing attack in the last year. That seems really low. 100% of 850 organizations in a global survey experienced at least one malware attack. 2018 survey of 2,848 IT professionals. So if you're a math person, that gives you a plus minus of about 3%. Revealed 77% of organizations do not have a formal cybersecurity incident response plan. And truly, in information security or cybersecurity incident response, if it's not formal, it doesn't exist. It's ad hoc. You're relying on, maybe somebody's experience, somebody who may or may not be available at the time of the incident. It's not a plan. So the existence of a strong incident response team has the most positive impact on data breach costs. So if you want to lower the cost of a data breach, have a strong incident response team. Doesn't mean you have to have super experts that are awesome at forensics and e-discovery and all that good stuff. It just means you need to have somebody who really understands what their role is in an incident. And you can follow templates. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do to build out those roles and make them very solid. Third-party involvement has the most negative impact. So, if you read about City of Baltimore, that's a classic. City of Atlanta, that's also a classic. In terms of the breach cost, when they brought in a third party, it cost them millions of dollars. All right, so what do you do? Well, almost what do you do? This is a more recent study that I cited here. Cyber attacks now cost companies $200,000 on average, putting many out of business. And this is some of the key points from that article. 43% of cyber attacks are aimed at small business, 14%. So in small business, that means 86% were not well prepared to defend themselves. 50+% suffered a breach in the last year, and 60% sadly go out of business within 6 months. Now, this is, again, pre-COVID. I don't know what COVID, what impact COVID has on all these numbers. I would think they'd probably be higher. But that's good. I don't have any studies for that. All right. So what do you do? Where are you? So first, figure out what do you have? I mean, what capabilities do you have? What can you draw from? How do you put this stuff together? What is an incident? What's a proper response? Once you sort of start figuring that stuff out, then you need to figure out, you need to tell everybody else in your organization that this is our incident response process so that they report them. You find that your best detection in many cases is human beings. It's not an IT. It's not technology. It's a human being that tells you, yeah, I noticed my computer's a little bit slow, or I clicked on a link and something just, doesn't seem right. It's that kind of stuff, it's having those people report those things. So you have a couple of options to figure out where you're at least a couple. These are the two that came to mind. Number one, you can get help from somebody you trust. Impact Group would be somebody that I would trust. Because I think, and it's not that Impact Group knows everything there is about incident response. They won't steer you wrong, right? So they'll tell you what they know about incident response, and they won't get out of their lane in terms of like trying to take on things that they're not capable of taking on. So it's not that everybody needs to be, like I said, not everybody needs to be an expert on incident response, but you need to know what your capabilities are and what you can and can't do. So that's why, if I were, it's not just because we're in this webinar, but I think Impact Group is a very viable solution for our first call, because I think they would steer you in the right place. So number two, assess yourself. This is the best one, in my opinion, because the best security people are the people that understand themselves best. If I know my environment really, really well, I know how my computers operate, I know how my network operates, I know my users, I know my management, I know baselines, all that stuff. I know myself really well. I'm better at security than you are. That's what it comes down to. So if you assess yourself, you go through this exercise. It's a great training exercise, and you start to understand yourself better. It's weird, but it really does work. So assessing yourself using a well-established, well-known methodology. And this is one that we use often, and it's free. So I'm just going to go through it quick. Go grab it. You can email me. I'll get you a copy, whatever. It's a good methodology. So this is what it is. It's the CREST Cybersecurity Incident Response Maturity Assessment. It's been around for a long time. CREST is a very well known. It's European, so don't hold that against them. But good stuff. There's the link there. 2 tools. So if you've never done this before, start with the summary maturity assessment tool. The detailed one will get pretty detailed. It'll take you a while. But the summary one is a great introduction to what should I have in an incident response plan. What parts am I missing? What parts should I work on? Where should I go next? The maturity model is based on 15 steps on a 3-phase incident response process. Now, in most of our incident responses, we have usually a 4 to 6 phase incident response process. That doesn't make it any better or worse than a 3-phase. It's just how things are organized. So starting out here with 3-phase is awesome. Yeah, and you can go get a detailed overview again by that link there, and it's all free, right? So check it out. Or if you're doing, if you do consulting, it's a great tool to do with your clients, right? Walk them through this. So phase 1, preparation. There are the 5 steps in preparation. Conduct a criticality assessment of your organization. That's looking at your organization. Where are my most critical assets? Where are sometimes in step 1, you could do a risk assessment. So you could use something like, our S2 org for step 1. Step 2, threat analysis. So what things, liquor stores have different threats than government facilities that have different threats than, a shoe store. So, understanding who would want what and what, and this methodology actually walks you through it. So if you're struggling trying to figure out what threats apply to you, don't worry about it. Just, if you go through the process, you'll learn it better. Consider the implications of people, process, technology, and information. Create an appropriate control framework. Review your state of readiness in cyber incident response. So at that point, you've essentially created your draft of a plan if you don't have a plan, or at least you've assessed your plan if you did have a plan. But that's what phase 1 is. Phase 2 is the actual response. It's go time, right? An incident happens. Is it an incident or is it not an incident? That's your first, usually your first part of the decision tree. If it's not an incident, well, then you go down a different process. If it is an incident, then classify the incident. That's how we do it, based on specific criteria. What kind of an incident is this? How critical is it? That'll dictate my response. So in a high severity incident, you assemble the entire incident response team if you've got one. In a low severity incident, it doesn't make sense to waste everybody's time. Usually those things can be handled at help desk. It's that kind of thing that happens in phase 2 of your incident response. And I'll give you, at the end of this presentation, I'll give you free tools to help you with that classification. I'll give you a free plan. I mean, it doesn't really matter. To us, we'd rather not get those calls anymore for people that need help with an incident response when they can handle it. You can handle 80% of your incident responses. All right. So there's response, and then follow-up. So once things are done, what are you going to do? You don't just wrap it up and, take off for home. We need to figure out what's the feedback. What can we do better? What did we miss? Could we have, limited damage, whatever. All that stuff kind of happens in phase 3. So that's what this tool, this CREST tool, walks you through that process. The high-level maturity assessment tool is the one to start with. It's also known as the summary maturity assessment tool. It's an Excel-based tool, so all you need is Office. You'll have to enable macros, but whatever. You can trust them. Just kidding. You can, maybe. 6 tabs: introduction, guidelines, profile and scope, configuration, assessment, and results. Really easy. And I'm just going to show you the screenshots. This is what the tool looks like when you open it up. This is, an introduction to the maturity model. It uses the same essential thing as the CMMI, if you know what that is, the capability maturity model. the first step is initial, and then all the way up to optimized and everything in between. This is, creating your first sort of, in large organizations, you might do multiple assessments, but here it's just filling out, what's the scope, what's the sector that we're in, whatever. This becomes important, I think, if you're comparing yourself against others potentially. And you can leave it blank too. And then you go through the actual configuration. So configuring how you're going to conduct the assessment. You can weight things. My advice is, if you're doing this for your first time, don't monkey with this page at all. It's just configuration. Accepting the defaults is fine, right? As you start getting down your own maturity to a level 4, maybe, then you start tweaking, things like this. But if you're starting out, which most are, according to the data, just leave it at default. It'll be more than sufficient. High-level assessment. This is the actual assessment. So this is when you're going through and answering these questions, rating yourself, be honest with yourself. And this is what it looks like sort of when you're done, right? You'll see this reporting. This is nice for management, so you can show, I really need to invest more time or money in this area versus that area. This is what that looks like. All right, so what else should you do? So there's 2 things we gave already. One was get some help. You can go to, Impact Group. It's a great place to go. Impact Group can take you to wherever you need to go next. You can certainly come to me. I'll probably send you back to Impact Group, and then we'll figure out from there. But you can always come to me. The other thing is you can do is self-assess. Assess yourself. If you've got time, self-assess, and then have somebody like Impact Group assess with you. See if you come up with similar results. It's kind of a good self-check. Other things that you can do is get an information security risk assessment. I don't understand how people can build an information security program if you haven't gotten a risk assessment. Because if you go back to our definition of what information security is, it's risk management. It's impossible to manage something you don't understand. So starting with an assessment allows me to make good risk decisions, and now I'm down that management track of what information security is. Simplify it. Obviously, we're impartial to our own assessment, but there are many assessments out there. I'm not one of those people that knocks competition. We do the best we can with what we built. You can get your S2 org through the Impact Group. Impact Group is a partner of Security Studio. This is really important because we talked about those other parts we've primarily focused on response. But what about prevention? Do you have adequate prevention, or are you missing something? I know that people in general, and I'm not picking on any one person, in general, are myopic. They don't, they focus on one part of information security versus, kind of the breadth of it all. And do you have proper detection in place? An information security risk assessment would help you with that. And one of the questions that I love, asking people is, where do you spend that next information security dollar? If you're going to justify budget with management, it's based on what? Really important to have that completed. And then get free stuff, right? With this presentation, I can give, and George, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I have a sample incident response plan, a sample incident log and categorization tool. You can have this slide deck, whatever it takes, right?
Are those separate files, the sample incident response plan and the log categorization? They like spreadsheets of some kind, or?
Yep. The incident response plan is a template. It's a Word template. The incident log and categorization tool is an Excel spreadsheet. The CREST tools, they're just the links.
Okay.
But yeah, all that stuff for free. And then contact George. George is a good guy. Someday we'll actually meet face to face and have coffee. Sounds like
right.
Justin's going to be getting you beer. I quit drinking 18 years ago, so I can't. I can buy
okay.
it, but I won't drink it.
All right. Well, you can bring your coffee mug. We'll focus on Justin seems to be okay with the beer. So, well, thanks, Evan. That was fantastic. And again, guys, check out his podcast. We're fans of yours and your book and Security Studio. So appreciate this very much. I'll put together a follow-up email for everyone to check out the presentation as well as the downloadable materials.